So, Steph, thank you so much for taking the time to help record this short video, which basically is celebrating the inaugural Independent Impact 50 via just a handful of questions about your experience of the awards and life as an independent more broadly. So, thank you for joining us.
Thanks ever so much, Rod. I'm happy to celebrate it. Yeah.
Brilliant. So let's dive straight in. So when you got the email that said you'd been included as one of the 50 in the inaugural list of the Independent Impact 50, how did you feel?
Oh, it was absolutely delightful. I mean, obviously, one self-nominates. I think many of us self-nominated. Maybe
Almost
others,
everyone
yeah,
self-nominated, yes.
maybe others were nominated by peers as well. So I sort of had a sense that I knew I had entered, so I was hopeful for a positive response. But there's something about the external validation I think that was so important. And I think particularly for somebody like me that's actually been working independently for about 22 years now, that sense of external validation is really key because one is always one's own worst critic. I think many of us probably in that group will, if we compared our personality types, might find ourselves to be perfectionists and always, having a sense of imposter syndrome, perhaps. And so it was just joyous for me to be in a room of people that I admired so much as well. And then to realize that I was being included amongst them, I think was just wonderful. So just external validation is really, really important thing for my personality type, particularly.
Wonderful. Perfectionism and imposter syndrome discuss. That's for another day. You've been doing this, as you say, for 22 years, so quite a long track record and a lot of experience. If you think about the behaviours over that period by clients that have surprised you the most since going independent, what would they be? And it would be great to hear, obviously, positive ones, but also some perhaps less positive behaviours you've experienced.
Well, the less positive behaviors, let's start with the bad and end up with the good. I think the toughest things that we face as independents is the cash flow issue, to be honest. Former clients or former employers even when one turns independent and don't realize the impact of paying you after 40 days rather than 30 days and how much nicer it would be if they paid after 7 days, even though if it says 30 days on the invoice. So I think that's one of the things that I've come to learn, always realizing that cash flow is king. In terms of positivity, I've found it very interesting, particularly at this time in my life, having been independent for such a long time, and then seeing some of my peers who perhaps may have been employees all of their life and are perhaps now facing new challenges and are perhaps facing independence, perhaps in the latter stages of their careers, perhaps looking a little bit enviously at us who have done it, worn the t-shirt and realized what it's like. But I think we have much support to give them and much knowledge that we can pass on to them. So it's an interesting time to have been independent for so long now, but seeing so many starting on this path so recently.
With the market in such flux, absolutely fascinating thought. So let's change gears. Let's imagine you are having lunch with Alistair and Sarah, the respective CEOs of the CIPR and PRCA. If there's one thing you'd like them to understand about life practicing as an independent, and one thing about the role and importance of the independent sector overall, what would those things be?
I think it's about the concept of strength in numbers, and I think that the celebration that you put together for us, and will be continuing to do so, is sort of testament to that. That was a visual representation of how we are kind of as a block. But I think the numbers do also speak for themselves. We are individual, but we are many, and we make a big impact on the whole profession. I suppose I come to it slightly adjunct to PR and always wondered whether I'd be even eligible to enter these awards because I work in the measurement space. But very much my world is all about PR. I'm very confident now. I know both of those heads of those trade organisations, and particularly with Sarah at the helm. I think the importance of understanding the regional challenges that independents face is really important. I've heard Advita from the CIPR also speak about this. The importance of considering independent practitioners and how they can attend events, for example. One thing I loved about your celebratory event earlier in the year was that it was timed perfectly so that those of us who live outside of London could do a there and back in the day without having to do an overnight. And these things can be really important. So it's about perhaps that diversity of thought as to where people are based and living, and whether they can take part in your activities too, it is a really key thing, and I think will increase participation from this large group of independents.
Absolutely, and that was intentional for that specific reason. So thank you for noting that. Let's imagine that you are talking to the younger Steph of 22 years ago, and she's considering whether or not to go it alone, weighing up the pros and cons. What would your advice be to your younger self?
It's interesting that you say people thinking about it and weighing up the pros and cons, because I think many of us are independent through circumstance rather than by choice. For me, it was due to my decision to move out of London and therefore sort of move out of the corporate world that was there, and remote working wasn't such a thing back there in the early 2000s. But I think the key thing for me, particularly again thinking of my personality type, is to not overthink it and that the universe will always provide. There will be good times, there will be bad times. Summers are notoriously quiet, and every summer I have the same reaction to a quiet period. And we should always keep our chin up because the universe will always provide.
Likely moved, but having had, the August wobble of will the phone ever ring again? And then you get to September and you go, I can't possibly handle all this volume. So, yes, amen. I couldn't agree anymore. So, last question. How, obviously, this is a complex world and a complex market. If you were to sum up how you feel about your micro business over the 12 months ahead, what words would you use?
But my always dynamic, but you could have asked me that question 20 years ago. I probably would have said the same thing. And that's probably just due to the pace of change in the media intelligence and actually PR world. Everything, there's shifting sounds happening at the moment. There have been for 5 or 10 years. I'm I'm facing some existential questions in my head about the role of influence, and the role of trust and the role of fragmentation in the media. And it's making my job more complex for sure, but actually I think it makes the role of a human in the loop in terms of that ecosystem much more important. So it's diverse, it's changing all the time, but it's always very exciting. So it keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
Are indeed the sense makers in chief, and I agree. For all the flux, there is huge opportunity out there. Steph, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a really enjoyable chat, albeit brief. I hope you'll throw your hat in for 2026, and I hope to see you very soon.
Cheers, Robert.